Super Smash Bros. For the Nintendo 64 is a unique game for me, and it always will be. I think part of the reason why it's so unique for me is that whereas most of my peers were first exposed to the Super Smash Bros. Series via either Melee for the Nintendo GameCube or Brawl for the Nintendo Wii, my first exposure to the series came through what was in fact the first title ever released in the series, a fact made even more unique considering I played it for the first time many years after its initial release. In 2011, I was selling my Xbox 360, the console that had been the primary source of entertainment for me throughout my high school years. Me and my friends would come over after high school and play games like Halo 3, Halo Reach, and Gears of War, all fairly mature shooter games. So I was coming to Smash Bros. 64 when my friend picked it up, shortly after I sold my 360, with a fairly clean slate. I had never experienced anything like it before, and I was very, very interested in the new mechanics of platform movement and the ledge. Although I never played it in a competitive sense, the fact that this game was my first exposure to platform fighters and to the Smash Bros. Series has certainly colored my expectations and my understanding of how the game works and how the game has developed, and also how I personally feel that the game should have developed. That said, I'm going to try my best to not allow that to color my opinion of the game and try and look at it from a fairly clean slate. First, of course, as a game that was intended to be for party use primarily, and then secondly, as a competitive game, which of course is the primary use and community that has been developed around it today. The Nintendo 64 controller was released at a time when Nintendo was shifting into a very new generation of gaming, 3D gaming. The controller was made with the objective primarily of catering to this shift. The triple-pronged middle joystick layout was reminiscent of the arcade sticks from arcades that were prevalent in Japan and even in the US at the time. The button layout to the right was also influenced by this. Unique, however, from the arcade influences were the shoulder buttons and trigger button that backed the controller. My best guess is that this was influenced by the shooter design of some shooter-specific arcade games. So far as this controller works in Super Smash Bros., it serves its purpose well, allowing for both quick movement as well as precise control, assuming that the controller is in good condition. I mention this bit about the condition because it is impossible to ignore the fact that the controller did not handle frequent use and wear as well as its arcade counterparts. It was common for the joystick in particular to become very loose over extended periods of use, often reaching the point where, if left in a neutral position, it would lean one way or another, inputting unintended movement. For its time, it was highly innovative and worked fantastically for so many other games on the system. But for Smash Bros., this controller would be the beginning of a somewhat troubled legacy for the series and its relationship with controlled input. The 64 was Nintendo's first big step into the world of 3D gaming, and as such, the graphics we see in Smash Bros. Is very much identical to the graphics we see in many of the system's other big titles. Large polygons and basic shaders ruled the day, and while certain design elements set them apart, it was not uncommon for some games to look very much alike in certain aspects. For example, the character model of Link from Ocarina of Time is very much akin to the character model used for him in Super Smash Bros. But then, simple graphics are actually a strength in this case, I would say. They allowed for a highly consistent frame rate that was sometimes less common in other titles, not only for the console, but at large for the time period. As a result, running around and throwing items, or jumping, felt comparatively intuitive, and there was a sense that you could react very quickly in this game, which made the feeling of playing it very smooth compared to other games at the time. The gameplay of Super Smash Bros. Is today something so iconic and unique that anyone who has played it even once can very easily relate how nuanced the controllers and physics feel when compared to anything else, including other games in the series. The use of percentage to indicate both how much damage you have taken as well as how far the next hit will send you introduces a whole new dynamic of how to approach combat. Combined with the sumo wrestling-like concept of forcing your opponent outside the range of the stage, the gameplay shifts greatly when playing near the edge of any given stage considerably from how it would feel in a traditional fighting game. The platform movement is great fun and very much resembles the movement in popular platformers like Super Mario Bros. And Donkey Kong Country, allowing a measure of skill from those titles to carry over. The process of unlocking different characters as you play through the story is unique and gives you a reason to play through again. The different game modes and unlocking of trophies that would become a staple for the series not only gave additional content, but also created modes that trained the player's abilities with the game in regards to movement and technique. Of course, the biggest showcase and central feature of the game was the 4-player free-for-all mode that let players knock each other around a colorful palette of different stages with their favorite Nintendo characters, some of whom became iconic for the company solely as a result of this game's popularity alone. I think that something worth taking particular note of is the fact that even in its earliest state on release, this game was very much designed with the intention of it being a multiplayer game. A game that you played with your friends foremost rather than alone. The thing about this element of the game is that where multiplayer existed in games at this time, especially multiplayer that pitted you against friends, competition was all but inevitable. Even in the more casual titles like Super Mario Party that had almost a game show kind of vibe to it, for those who took it there, these titles became competitive endeavors, where friends would outplay each other for nothing more than pride and bragging rights. Without getting too philosophical here, I honestly believe that when people are placed in an environment where they have full control and they are invariably trying to overcome an obstacle or challenge in the form of another person like themselves, competition is not only expected, but in fact, inevitable. I say this because this has been the way we as humans respond to such occasions for thousands of years and in a multitude of varying contexts and circumstances. So although Sakurai made this game primarily for a casual crowd, and has gone on record with comments that are very much opposed to the competitive scenes for his games, this outcome was more or less guaranteed regardless of whether or not he knew about it. All that to say, even if you have never played the game with friends or only played occasionally with people who are less familiar with the Smash Bros. Series, this game is still outstanding, and its initial popularity has withstood the test of time, even if some of its features have become outdated. That said, if Sakurai's true objective was to make a game where competition would be a non-factor, or not primary, then he should have opted to make Smash Bros. Single player. But because he didn't, the game has become the Nintendo IP spotlight colossus that it is today, which leads me on to the second part of this review. The competitive scene for Smash Bros. Is interesting in that, unlike all of the others, it didn't come into existence as fast as Melee or Brawl. I am not certain how long exactly the competitive scene for the game has been around, as details concerning its history are somewhat missing in action when compared to the plethora of information available for the other games. I attribute part of this to the time of its release. The internet was not the multi-platform social networking leviathan it is today, and by virtue of that alone, the capacity for the people to find out about tournaments and other events was somewhat limited. The earliest recorded tournament on the Smash Bros. Wiki dates to 2006, by which time the internet was more of a presence and Melee had already been well established with its own competitive scene. I wouldn't go so far as to say that Melee's scene spawned Smash 64's, but the growth of the latter is undeniably linked to the former. It wasn't long at all before the two games began sharing events and venues. In fact, the first 64 tournament to feature an American venue, recorded on the wiki, was a Melee event primarily, FC Diamond hosted in 2007. Since that time, the growth of the internet and the competitive Smash scene in general has only further helped the growth of the once tiny grassroots competitive scene for Smash 64. The advancement of emulation technology and recent development of online matchmaking via systems like Anther's Ladder have bolstered it into a respectable presence that can be found nowadays at nearly any national or major tournament where any of the other Smash games are featured. So, if you haven't had a chance to experience this game yet, don't let its age or the lack of Nintendo 64 intimidate you. I'll have links to some community resources in the description of this video, so feel free to dive in and explore this fantastic game. It's crucial to explore the key elements of each of these games that make the Super Smash Bros. Series unique not only from other fighting games, but also from each other. Since Super Smash Bros. 64 is the first entry in the series, there are a great deal of mechanics that are being introduced for the first time that I will need to talk about. For those of you more familiar with the basic tech in these games, you may want to skip some of this as I'm about to get into what will doubtless be quite familiar jargon to many of you. But it will be necessary in order to give this game an accurate review in the competitive sense, as well as give viewers an understanding of the mechanics that will be pre-existent in the following Smash games. To that end, I will now discuss the mechanics that are essential to competitive Smash play, starting with the grab. The grab in 64 is actually not too far afield from its counterpart mechanic that you can find in most fighting games. Once you grab someone, based on input, you can throw them either backwards or forwards depending on where you want to send them and how you want to combo them. The throw also does a set amount of damage, though the knockback or how far the throw will send your opponent varies with the percentage of damage they have taken. The unique mechanic present in Super Smash Bros. From other fighting games is the ability to simply hold your opponent after grabbing them, In teams, this provides some unique combo setups and allows for some creative finishers to be sure. The grab in 64 is enormously powerful when compared to most of the other titles in the series, and at a certain percentage virtually all of them become a guaranteed kill regardless of which character uses the throw. While this is true of all the Smash Bros. Titles, the degree to how quickly it happens in 64 is what sets it apart, a theme that will continue with regards to how this game's combo mechanics work and operate. Furthermore, the throw off the grab, the forward throw in particular, sets certain characters up with combos that can take you from 0 to the loss of a stock almost guaranteed, another theme that we will see throughout the rest of this review. The fascinating thing about the shield in 64 is how surprisingly unsafe it actually is at higher levels of play in most situations. The shield in Super Smash Bros. Takes the form of a bubble that surrounds the body or hurt box, as it were, of the character using it. The shield comes up near instantly and absorbs all attacks from the air or the ground, save for grab, though the shield will take some damage and decrease in size from these attacks. While in shield, the player's character can roll to the left or the right in order to avoid incoming attacks or to reposition. During this time, the character is untouchable thanks to invincible frames, though they can be punished during a short time of vulnerability at the end of the roll. As time passes, the bubble decreases in size at a gradual rate until certain parts of the shielding character's body are exposed, allowing for certain attacks to hit the character doing damage and causing the shield to be dropped. This is known as shield stabbing, or shield poking. The shield can be directionally angled to counteract this, or otherwise emphasize the shield's coverage of a certain part of the character in anticipation of an oncoming attack. When attacked, shields that receive attacks will cause the character's shielding to slide back a short distance. When this happens on platforms, it can cause some characters that are too close to the edge to be pushed off the platform and drop their shield. This is known as a shield slide, and it can be used to catch players off guard to start a combo. Another critical option on a platform is shield dropping, which allows the player's character to drop through the platform while shielding in order to escape pressure or to counterattack unsafe options on the shield. Another popular counterattack option out of shield is the shield grab, which in certain ground attacks and poorly spaced aerial attacks done too close can be shield grabbed after the shield takes the attack. Of course, there are liabilities that come with shielding, if you choose to do so at the wrong time, and none of the Smash games emphasize this more than Smash 64. When hit with an attack, there is a period of time in which you are unable to take any actions out of shield or roll away. This is a condition known as shield stun that locks the player's character inside of their shield. There are certain attacks that do more damage to the shield, and some attacks that do very little damage to the shield. However, it is not uncommon for the attacks that do lighter shield damage to also have greater shield stun. For example, Fox's down air or aerial drill attack does little damage to the shield while delivering a great amount of shield stun. If a character's shield takes too much damage and shrinks down in a size too much, they will experience a shield break in which the bubble bursts, and they are caught in a state in which they cannot move or give any responsive inputs to their stunned character for 30 seconds. The only way to get out of this state is to either receive damage or wait the 30 seconds for the shield to fully replenish and for their character to come to, at which point they can again be controlled by the player. The other highly rare and circumstantial occasion that allows for escape from the shield-broken stun state is for a non-attack based force such as the wind on Dreamland to push the character off the edge of a platform, in which case the effects of edge cancelling will immediately remove the stun state, and the character can act immediately. In Smash 64, it is very common for a shield break to result in a combo setup that causes the stock to be lost. Due to the nature of how strong shield stun is in general in Smash 64, it is also far more common to see shield breaks in Smash 64 than in any of the other Smash games. This state of affairs, combined with the limited options that most of the cast can perform out of shield, make it a very occasional option at high-level play, with most players opting to use their movement and spacing to avoid the possibility of being shield pressured into a shield break or grabbed while in shield. It is this comparatively fragile nature of the shield in Smash 64 that makes it unique in its methodology and application from the rest of the entries in the Smash Bros. Series that follow. That said, all of the aforementioned terminology concerning the shield does exist in the other Smash games as well, though the use and application of these techniques certainly differs. A big part of the reason that shield stun is so strong in Smash 64 is because hit stun in general is so strong in Smash 64. Hit stun, like shield stun, is a state in which after being hit or receiving an unshielded attack, the player's character is unable to move or input any responsive commands to their character save for directional input, which we will discuss shortly. This state is essential to the ability to pull off successful combos, as without it the character being attacked can interrupt said combo or even manage to start their own. This is where the idea of a true combo, that is, a combo that cannot be escaped under typical circumstances, enters into the game. These combos are everywhere in Smash 64, and every character in the game has at least one, if not several. The conditions necessary to pull off these combos vary. However, one general rule that can be applied to all combos is the idea of juggling or keeping an opponent airborne throughout the length of a combo in order to remove their defensive options of teching or shielding while also keeping them in a prolonged state of hit stun, during which the combo can carry the character being comboed off the stage or into a position where a stock taking combo finishing blow can be delivered. While hitstun is certainly a crucial and necessary factor in Smash Bros., the first entry in the series has incredibly high hitstun for most of the cast when compared to later entries. This results in a plethora of true combos, and at the highest level of play, the threat of being taken from a new stock to losing it instantly at the hands of one of these combos can be so strong that it will result in a neutral in which players are too cautious to even approach, sometimes resulting in awkward and drawn-out stalemates. The idea of a disjointed hitbox stems from the relationship that normally exists between hitboxes and hurtboxes. A hitbox is the area around a character's attack that is active or will cause damage when it hits another character. A hurtbox is the part of the character's model that will receive damage or take knockback when normally hit by a hitbox. The relationship in most fighting games at the time of Super Smash Bros. Release was that the hurtbox and hitbox of most characters were closely joined. This allowed for interactions to take place such as trading, in which two characters attack simultaneously and are both hit by the other's hurtbox. The only exception to this rule was the projectile, a catch-all for any move that had an active hitbox on it but was entirely unconnected to any hurtbox. The most traditional popular example of this is the Hadoken or fireball attack in the Street Fighter games. Several characters in Smash 64 have projectiles, and with items turned on, anybody can use a projectile as all items are throwable. Due to the nature of movement in Smash 64 as well as the generally slower moving projectiles, the idea of spamming these ranged attacks is considerably less viable than in traditional fighting games, though projectiles are very effective and useful in situations where edgeguarding takes place. A disjointed hitbox is different, however, and something that, while it does exist in other fighting games, is especially pronounced in the Smash Bros. Games given the nature of movement and hitstun that exists in these games. A disjointed hitbox is a hitbox that, while connected to a character's hurtbox, is so large, lengthy, or otherwise extended from the character's hurtbox that it allows for occasions where damage can be dealt one-sidedly in situations that for most other characters might have resulted in a trade. Given how quick the frame data from melee attacks is typically compared to projectiles, which usually have longer startup time, these hitboxes can be devastating, and if used effectively, can allow for one character to entirely zone out his opponent and force situations where they can combo or otherwise attack and pressure their opponent with minimized or otherwise greatly reduced risk to themselves. This particular concept has had an enormous impact not only on Smash Bros. Games, but in fighting games at large. And while some games have employed these kinds of hitboxes in ways that seem questionable, so far as the question of game balance is concerned, Smash 64 is fortunately not one of those games. The characters that have disjointed hitboxes are few, and even then it is usually only a few of their attacks that are truly disjointed, save perhaps for Link, whose sword is entirely disjointed on almost all of his attacks. This approach to the nature of disjointed hitbox, intentional or otherwise, results in fewer occasions where it is overpowering or entirely limiting to the characters in the game that lack them. Indeed, if there is a Smash game that could be argued as having the best balance with regards to disjointed hitboxes, I would argue that it is Smash 64, though its smaller cast and hence number of opportunities to introduce disjointed hitboxes are far fewer than in later releases. The idea of DI, or directional influence, is that when your character is hit or otherwise in a combo, you can influence the direction your character moves in or shifts. This at first seemingly minute element of Smash Bros. Is actually one of the biggest parts of competitive play, as it allows for a unique kind of defensive option where skilled players can make combos harder to complete, escape out of combos entirely, recover to the stage, and in some cases turn the other player's offensive into their own. In most Smash games, this can be done merely by holding the analog stick in a certain direction. In Smash 64, however, DI in this manner practically doesn't exist. Instead, what they have is positional DI, or PI, in which at the moment the player's character is hit, they can influence where the character is sent based on the direction of their analog stick at the moment that they are hit. Otherwise, what Smash 64 players have learned to utilize is the specialized SDI, in which a certain direction is inputted multiple times as quickly as possible, usually by sliding the joystick up and down a certain part of the perimeter of the joystick's casing. This results in significant movement while in hit stun, and can result in moves that would normally send the characters flying, sending them only a short distance or even allowing the character to tech, that is, to shield at the moment the character hits the ground, and either stand up or immediately roll to the right or the left based on the character's input. In most of the other Smash games, DI is strong enough on its own to be the primary method used, whereas SDI tends to be more situational. That said, SDI is the primary kind of DI used in Smash 64, and is likely the strongest defensive option available at a competitive level aside from simply not being hit. With all these strong offensive options and only a handful of truly valid defensive options, movement becomes the essential ingredient and medium by which to carry out both. The utilization of techniques such as dash dancing, edge cancelling, and pivots is essential in order to maintain a simultaneous control of your character's own space, while also threatening the space of your opponent. Indeed, this bit about space control is the primary meaning behind the word spacing. It is the idea that you understand not only the space, but also the moves available to your own character and your opponent's character well enough to effectively maintain a position where you can avoid being hit, while also setting yourself up to deliver a hit. While the concepts concerning shield pressure, hit stun, and hitboxes relate greatly to the idea of a punish, that is, maximizing damage output on the mistakes of your opponent, the concept of movement in Smash 64 especially relates greatly to the concept of the neutral, the points in the game or match where neither character is being hit or comboed, though both are actively seeking that opportunity to do so. In Smash 64, the movement is fairly straightforward, though some characters have certain tributes that change the way their movement works. You have walking, running, dashing, jumping, double jumping, and special moves or attacks that have a movement to them, which usually operate off of the B button. The only things that add additional variance beyond that is character weight and fall speed. In Smash 64, it is as straightforward as being light or heavy with regards to fall speed. You are either a floaty who falls slowly and can drift considerably in the air as a result, or a fast faller who has considerably less drift but moves through the air very quickly. The movement of the floaty characters at a higher level is usually to utilize their hang time to occupy or threaten more space both on and off the stage. In the case of the fast faller, their faster fall speed and by extension, via pivots and edge cancelling, faster movement is typically used to put the floaty on edge and get into better positioning to set up for fast, hard-hitting combos. While there is some variance of course, these general rules can be pretty clearly seen in effect for floaties like Jigglypuff and Kirby, as well as for fast-falling characters like Fox and Captain Falcon at the higher levels of play. When you combine all this in conjunction with how hard-hitting the punish game in Smash 64 is, the movement, though not as deep as later titles, becomes of the utmost importance, and positioning becomes the key to victory, almost regardless of the match. As a result, the tier list is greatly influenced by the characters whose movement is the fastest, the safest, or the trickiest. Pikachu's up B when combined with edge cancelling makes him nearly unstoppable with regards to spatial control and variety of movement options. Combine this with his excellent frame data and phenomenal moveset and you have yourself the best character in the game. Though right on his heels is Kirby with great air mobility and fantastic drift, along with the strongest multi-hitbox moves in the game. Combine that with his ability to casually go off stage to edgeguard and to effectively recover as needed and you have a strong contender for Pikachu. And then, while Captain Falcon's recovery might be easily exploited, his movement speed on the ground is the fastest in the game. Combine that with his long-reaching hitboxes and you have a matchup that can be highly tempestuous to engage with even for Pikachu. The movement in Smash 64 itself is not particularly remarkable in light of the entire series. That said, it is solid and responsive, and, provided that the controller is in good condition, it can be very precise and nuanced even. But the movement itself is not what makes movement so important and critical to the competitive side of the game. What makes the movement so important is the ever-present threat of Smash 64's devastating combo game. One false pivot, one poorly timed or misspaced jump or up special, at the upper tier of play, it's a stock, virtually regardless of who the opponent's character is. The ledge is probably the single biggest influence on how the competitive side of any given Smash game will play out. It will either be the place of assured destruction, or the last place of refuge in a close match. The place you hope you never find yourself trying to reach, or the place where you go to reset neutral and actually gain and acquire unstoppable stage presence. In Smash 64, though, you ideally never want to be in a position where you are trying to reach the ledge, because the odds are not in your favor. Unlike most of the later Smash games, your character must be facing directly towards the ledge in order to grab it. Once you grab it, you gain a period of intangibility for a duration of 60 frames. The 60-frame window is exclusive to Smash 64, though a period of intangibility is granted in all of the Smash games when the ledge is grabbed. However, if another character grabs the ledge shortly before you reach it, this will prevent you both from damaging that character and from grabbing the ledge. In the case that you are too far to land on stage or go past the ledge, you will fall to your death. This strategy in the Smash games that feature it is called edge hogging, and is one of the strongest edge guarding options in the Smash games. If the character is able to go past the edge and land on stage, it is typical for the character to be in a state where, for a variable amount of frames, depending on the character, they are unable to act. This is called landing lag. If they landed close to the edge, most characters in the game let go of the ledge and use their second jump to jump onto the stage, usually with an attack or to simply grab the character in landing lag and throw them back. This technique of hopping up from the ledge is called ledge hopping. While the ledge is brutal to those players unfortunate enough to find themselves on the wrong side of it, it should be noted that in Smash 64 it does not yield many particularly strong benefits for those seeking to control the match on stage. The invincibility offered by grabbing the ledge cannot be refreshed so quickly as to carry it onto the stage by any of the cast, and the few that can refresh it more quickly than that use the invincibility more or less to exclusively get back safely onto the stage. In this sense, the ledge in Smash 64 is, in its own way, fairest of all the Smash Bros. Ledges. Yes, it is brutal and problematic to rely on in the case of a recovery, but there are no surprises there. It is a reminder that if you had spaced properly, you wouldn't be in this position to begin with, and so sometimes serves as an encouragement to improve even further with regards to your spacing in neutral game. In this way, Smash 64 retains an element of the traditional fighting game genre, a rule that is true of all such fighting games, near regardless of their unique mechanics or designs. The corner is always a bad place to be, and your options there are always fewer and riskier. The corner is where you end up if you are being outplayed and outpressured, and thus the true objective of the game becomes to control the center. If the stages in Smash 64 are to be seen as a boxing ring, then the ledge is the manifestation of the corners of that boxing ring. Smash 64 has a small roster, but in the years since its release, this small cast of characters has become the classical representation not only of Nintendo's biggest and most successful IPs, but also of the variety of playstyles that are available in any one of the given Smash games. Mario, Donkey Kong, Link, and Samus are all staple characters of the Nintendo franchise, but then the inclusion of less well-known characters like F-Zero's Captain Falcon and Earthbound's Ness have also caused both of these relatively minor franchises to grow significantly in popularity following the game's release. The advantages of the small roster greatly outweigh the disadvantages when it comes to the goal of achieving an ideal game balance for competitive play. While there are clear-cut reasons for Pikachu to be regarded as the best character just as much as there are obvious reasons to place Luigi as the worst, any of these characters have the capacity to beat any of the others in a much bigger way than is possible in any of the other Smash games to follow. A big part of this can be owed to the simple fact of how strong the punish game is in Smash 64. Every character has an option in any given situation, with regards to punishing, that can allow either for a stock to be taken outright, or for a highly advantageous situation or edgeguard scenario to be set up. Every aggressive maneuver, no matter how strong, has a counterplay against it that can make it a liability if the attacker doesn't adjust quickly. Every recovery in the game, even Pikachu's, can be taken advantage of by the character on stage, given enough space to work with. This doesn't mean that certain matchups aren't difficult. Captain Falcon struggles enormously against Kirby. Donkey Kong catches the hands real bad against Yoshi. But what makes these matchups balanced, when compared to the later entries in the series, is the simple fact that they are hard but fair. There is no matchup that exists in this game where the discrepancy between the skill and execution required is too great or too little from one character to another. Yeah, Pikachu has some great tools for controlling neutral. None of them mean anything against a Luigi whose punishes are on point and whose spacing is consistent and safe. Kong might have a tough time getting out of combo strings, but his back throw is the strongest in the game, and his up B on ledge can guarantee edge guards against most of the game's fast fallers. No strength of any given character is so great that it is insurmountable by any single member of the rest of the cast. By the same token, no weakness of any given character is so great that they can't overcome it with their own respective strengths. Something that can help us to realize how balanced this tier list is to take into account how long the game has been out and how far its meta has been developed. If any of the Smash games released thus far has a metagame that has been fully explored, or at least is closest to it, it's Smash 64. This process has been expedited by the small cast and the single legal stage used in competitive play. But even with all the developments and optimization that has taken place, there is yet to be a single tournament where a character is not represented. If anything, individual players usually end up representing multiple characters from 64's cast in the same tournament, on a more regular basis rather than playing only a single character. The results of characters that win tournaments are also varied, usually as a result of this multi-character use. So while the tier list may be locked in for good, if the past several years of tournaments have shown us anything, it's that the consistency of full cast representation for Smash 64 isn't going anywhere. Something else important to be noted, although one might regard it as relatively unrelated to the balance of a game, is the surprising lack of game-breaking bugs or glitches that the game has in comparison to some of the games that follow. Very rarely do any bugs of any significant nature occur in the game whatsoever, let alone bugs that would affect competitive play to any serious degree. While this is a crucial feature of consistent game engine performance, something taken granted nowadays by most competitive fighting games, it is something to be noted and appreciated, especially for a title as old as Smash 64. Every single one of the Smash Bros. Games have certain things about them that are appealing and certain things about them that are unappealing. Things that keep us playing them and things that, though we might genuinely dislike, we choose to tolerate for our love of the things we enjoy. In the case of Smash 64, it is, as with so many other elements of this game, unique. Many of the things that draw certain players to it are the same things that will drive others away. The hard-locked punish game might appeal very greatly to players who prefer consistency and methodology, while it might be repulsive to players who prioritize creativity and accessible defense. The small and balanced cast will doubtless appeal to players content with the core base of styles of play, while being distasteful to those who are looking for a variety of characters and unique playstyles. In the case of Smash 64, the brutal punish game, small cast, and limited stage choice are going to be factors where players either don't mind and are willing to count the cost, or will become frustrated to the point of refusing to engage with the game at all. But, if there's one thing that can be said about this game, it is that so much of what has come after for both Smash and the genre it created begins here. I would say that if you are brand new to competitive Smash at any level for any of the games, you owe it to yourself to make time for a match or two on N64. Not only to be introduced to the mechanics of the series, or to be reminded of principles that still hold true for new entries, if not as strongly, but primarily to understand the community as it is today, to take a moment to go back and recognize how small this entire thing was when it first started, and to remind yourself that there was a point in time where the peak of your skill was only as good as the endurance of your neutral. Thanks for watching this far. If you liked what you saw, stay tuned for the upcoming review of Super Smash Bros. Melee for the Nintendo GameCube, which will be coming out later this month. If you want to get involved in the Smash 64 community, have a look at the links below to their Discord, Reddit, and related social media groups, as well as the setup guide for Smash 64's net play on Anther's Ladder. I will catch you next time.